So it looks like I've got some explaining to do. I released a video very recently, not really reviewing, kind of just overviewing a bow and the atrociousness of it, in my opinion. And after discussing with the community in archery, it's very apparent that some more information and a closer up look is warranted. I talked a lot with my Discord server and people in person, and it's just become apparent that I need to give a little bit more information as to why I came to the conclusion I came to so harshly. A really large part of why I glossed over everything so quickly was because clearly it is very emotionally and ethically charged. And I didn't want to give any sort of appearance that I was endorsing any of the practices involved with any part of this company at all. Any of their equipment, any of their products, none of it did I want to seem like I was endorsing, in support of, or at all put some sort of message out that made it seem like it was okay for them to do what they're doing. So clearly within the community, at least on YouTube, this whole subject has caused quite a stir, and I'm really going to take a little bit more time here today and show you more as to what I'm seeing and why I came to the conclusion I came to. And also I'll be able to show you a bit more detail as to why this riser is purely junk. They didn't send me the wrong bolts, and I'll show you why here in a little bit. Before I wanted to do that, I want to give you a little bit of my background so hopefully you can understand if you're a new viewer on this channel or you're not familiar with my background at all. I started in a very small town outside of Buffalo, New York. My dad won a bow at a gun raffle when I was 5 years old. On my 6th birthday, my parents gathered up enough money to buy me a Bear compound, one of those really small fiberglass compounds with the round wheels, steel cables, and steel string, and some arrows. And on my 6th birthday, I shot my very first arrow. I was hooked from then and basically just shot as much as I possibly could all the time. And with the exception of that first bow, I didn't get a brand new bow that was either purchased for me or that I purchased myself until I earned it. So from 6 years old to at least 12 years old, I was shooting compound. And actually, this bow right here, this Sky Medalist, this actual bow, was my very first recurve. It was on the rack, on the wall, for people to use in the club. There was a lot of single-piece fiberglass Bear recurves that were very rudimentary with a bear hair rest sticking out and a rest that was a slider inside the riser. And then these were like the premium bows that were clearly outbowed for just about any beginner. And I picked this one off the wall, and it's a, an old school Sky Medalist, as you can see here. And, it's quite the piece. I was using stick-on clickers to be able to use this thing, and they kept falling off, so my dad drilled and tapped the riser here and made a biter clicker work. This is literally my very first bow. This is what started it all and got me inspired to try out and become an Olympian. Actually, the first thing that caught my eye was to go to the Empire State Games. It's like a little mini Olympics. There's many different regions across the state. They all come together and compete at the Empire State Games. I was part of the Western Division, and we ended up winning team rounds. I think I had got an individual silver or something at that very first major event. And then from there, I bought used equipment all the way up to and including arrows until the G3 limbs came out. And that was after I made the cadet USAT team because I had earned my spot. I had shot well enough at enough events. And when I say used equipment, I mean like used arrows. I was buying used arrows from people, used limbs, used strings, used risers, used everything because my family was not doing very well financially. And that weighed pretty heavy on me, so I would never ask for new equipment. Maybe that's not true. Maybe I did get a set of G3 limbs not when I was on USAT, but I don't think so. I'm pretty positive I had earned a USAT slot shooting Carbon Plus limbs from Hoyt on a black Axis riser that I had. Again, bought used for like sub $100, $150 range, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think I borrowed the limbs actually until I could save up enough money to buy the G3 limbs. I think they were like $100 once I made the USAT team. And then I also bought a Hoyt Helix, one of the very first risers I bought as well through the Junior USAT program because again, I had earned my slot. I'm in no way, shape, or form privileged. The only privilege that I have is that I had caring parents that instilled a competitive mindset and a work ethic that is unrelenting. That is the only privilege that I have ever had in my entire life. Everything else I have earned. Now, I have also earned the spots on Olympic teams. I have also earned sponsorships. Sponsorships aren't as good or as all rainbows and sunshine as many people would think they are. Yes, you get free equipment. But does that free equipment mean that it's the best equipment? No, it does not. Is it up to you as an individual to do your due diligence and do your job to make sure that the company you sign with, especially if you're signing exclusivity, which basically every single sponsorship will be in that regard, it's up to you as the individual to make sure it is the best quality equipment you can possibly get. I didn't do that. And did I know? I don't think I knew. Could I have known? No way. Absolutely not. You know, sponsorships, they do come with benefits. You do get support, you do get elevated, but it does sometimes come at a cost. You're not able to have the freedom that you would otherwise have if you were not sponsored by somebody and you were paying for your own equipment. For example, I was unable to shoot anything non-formula. I had to shoot formula once formula came out. I did not know that until several years later, once some other ILF risers came out, and I was not allowed to shoot anything non-formula. So I wasn't even allowed to try that kind of stuff, let alone try other companies. Yes, being sponsored again, like I said, got free equipment. I also got some perks as far as financial things are concerned to help fund my habit of archery, flying around the world, and trying to make Olympic teams. All of those things are strategic, and it would be absolutely stupid of me to not accept a sponsorship deal, because when I first lived at the training center through 2011, I had to make decisions of, do I buy new shoes because I can see my toes poking out the ends, or do I go to the movies because everybody else is going to the movies? And I had to make those tough decisions because I wasn't going to ask my parents for handouts. I wasn't going to ask for allowances or anything. I was over the age of 18, out of the house, living on my own. Yes, room and board was taken care of, and a whole lot of other benefits were there too, but I still had to take care of myself. Still had to buy my own underwear and buy my own shoes, and I had to make tough decisions and sacrifices that I was willingly making to not go find entertainment and to instead take care of myself by buying some shoes from Payless Shoes. I had to make some financial decisions that were quite tough at times, and it was difficult, but I stuck through it. And like I said, I earned the opportunity to have sponsorships. My hard work paid off, and I continued to grow in the sport and earn more and more money. A large part of what I did as a sponsored shooter was to pump up the companies that I represented. It's my job. As a signed shooter, it is my job to represent them as best as humanly possible, to really make sure I hit the highlights and really talk about the positive things, and never talk about the bad things, ever. And if somebody did come up to me with a concern of a problem that I hadn't seen myself, I would send them to customer service, just like everybody else would and should as well. Because like you know, as a consumer, if you buy a piece of equipment and something's wrong with it, the company should take care of you and make things right. I'll talk a little bit more about that as well in regards to why I did not do that with the riser that is behind me. The reason I did those things in regards to pumping up the company was because I was trying to move up the ladder, trying to earn more, trying to be sponsored by more companies, trying to be a real professional shooter. That's what pros do who are actually sponsored. If you have ever gone through any sort of media training, like I have, I was trained by some of the best media executives, media people in regards to actual public speaking, on how to turn an interview into talking about breakfast cereal. And it's actually quite easy if you know what you're doing. As a new person who was being interviewed on national TV, I had no idea that I could actually direct conversations with leading answers, because then they would come back and ask a follow-up question based on that answer you gave. And you can actually steer the conversation as a person being interviewed, as long as the person who is interviewing you is not being too combative. So I learned a lot about those things, and I use that knowledge, I use that experience today, right now, talking to you in front of this camera. I know enough to look into the lens, not enough to look into the viewfinder. If I had a person here that was interviewing me, I would be talking to them, Because looking at you, the camera, after they asked me a question, so what do you think about this Sky Medalist? How do you feel that this was your very first bow? Well, let me tell you about my first bow. It's really fun and exciting. That's awkward. You must address the person who is interviewing you or look into the lens and not the viewfinder. Very basic little things that I use to my advantage that still help me today. Yes, those sponsorships could, in theory, be affecting me. But there's many different things that have happened in the past in regards to prior sponsorships that I've had with other companies. There was a lot of assumptions being made. There was a lot of asking. There was a lot of giving. And there was a lot of shortcomings in many, many different ways. I'm not going to divulge too much information because I still have friends that work at companies, and I still have respect for the companies because they ultimately did what they needed to do, what's best for the company. Ultimately, there was a falling out, and if you have at all watched this channel in the past, you'll see that every single time I give a genuine review of a piece of equipment, I will tell you if the company gave it to me. I will tell you if the link in the description below is an affiliate link and if it helps this channel or not. If it does anything for my bottom line to continue to produce content for you for free. Hoyt and other companies have been very generous in sending me equipment at times. But it is sent to me under one condition from my own choice. I will only be honest. I will not lie. I will not hide anything. However, if I find a problem, I will first contact the company, discuss with them what's going on because mistakes do happen. There is definitely some bows and pieces of equipment that make their way through quality control that really shouldn't have. Sometimes it's user error. I strip something out, I can't figure out how to assemble it correctly or whatnot. I always give them first right of refusal, first chance to give me some sort of response. I will not lie, not even a lie of omission, by not telling you something. I will talk about it in just various different ways. If I had a very big problem with aligning limbs and tightening grub screws and locking grub screws, and it would cause the limbs to jam in place, if you've watched this channel for any period of time, you know that one of those bows would be my first reviews. I did everything I possibly could, even though I was told it's my fault and I just don't know what I'm doing. I tried to the letter of what they told me on how to do it, and I still couldn't get the bow to work properly, and I shared that with you because I believe it's important to be clear. I will also tell you when I buy the equipment myself too. Just like I did in the GMX3 review, I bought that riser myself. I bought the limbs that are hopefully arriving today as well myself, and I bought this riser behind me myself too. I have no allegiance to anybody. I disallow any sponsorships. I owe no favors to anybody in any of the companies throughout the entire archery industry. The only thing that I owe is truth and honesty to you, my viewer, because if I'm not doing my job correctly in reviewing these bows impartially, that affects our relationship. That affects my ability to convey what I'm seeing, honestly and straightforward to you, and that impedes your ability to trust me. I make no money off of selling any of this equipment. I buy the equipment myself, I review it, I do try to earn money off views, I try to earn money off of apparel, donations, support in many different ways, shapes, and forms, but that's the only way that I earn money off of this channel. I don't lie to you by pumping up companies because it affects my bottom line. That would do very much so the opposite. So this brings me to what this channel is about. It's about honesty, it's about passion, it's about drive, it's about me genuinely wanting to share with you because I care very much so about archery. It has literally been my life since I was like 12 years old. I went to the local archery range every Saturday morning, and I got there 3 hours early so I could help young kids learn how to shoot. I was 12 or 13 years old at the time, showing up early, teaching younger kids how to shoot in the very beginner class, hanging out with some friends that also came early throughout the middle class because I was in the advanced class, and then I shot my arrows and went home. It was literally my only social outlet in life. I was very much so harassed as a student in school. For whatever reason, I was definitely very small. I'd come to find out I had no idea that I was actually small. I didn't think stuff like that mattered. Very wiry, very passionate, very much so explosive, for lack of better terms. And I did not fare well socially because of that. Despite being talented in many different ways, including sports, I was shunned for those talents for whatever reason. Probably because kids are kids. You know, they find ways to push buttons, and if it makes a difference, they'll keep pushing it. So archery literally was my social outlet. I really didn't socialize or talk to really anybody else outside of archery until I moved out to the Olympic Training Center. And even that really trickled into my life in many different ways as far as dealing with trust in people. So, you know, not to get too personal, but archery means a lot to me. I'm only telling you the story because archery is really, really important to me, and it means a lot that I remain in the sport. I did also, obviously, go through some successes in the sport, performance-wise. And then once I left the sport, everything stopped. Not only did my competing in archery stop, not only did my involvement in archery stop, but all of my friends in archery stopped talking to me. It was status related, and it was very sad and very hurtful. However, that's all behind me, and I can do my best here to give back to you, the people who care, the people who want to learn, the people who want to understand, and hopefully I can earn trust in that way by giving true feedback about various pieces of equipment, giving inside looks into how to shoot, how to tune bows, how to set things up, how to share my knowledge with others, because I don't believe you should pay for knowledge. I think it's just a learned and lived experience that others can also get to. But instead of watching other people struggle, I'd rather lift people up and help them out by giving them more support so that way they can be empowered and enjoy archery as much as I have over the years. So like I said, this channel is just really about giving back as much as I can. Does it help me make a living? Absolutely. I won't lie about that. There's a reason why I've written books. There's a reason why I sell things on my website. There's a reason why I've made products and have plans for many, many products in the future. And it's just about time. Don't have enough time. And I can't wait to make an impact far more so than I have already in archery. So let's talk about the bow and talk about why I even bought this thing. Like I said, it is very ethically and emotionally charged for many different reasons. I am absolutely a patriot. I am absolutely a proud American, and any company that claims it's made in the USA has my support, especially if it's true. And it's not just assembled in the USA. Made in the USA from base materials, sourced in the USA. That's excellent. And I can't support a company enough that actually does that. So in that way, I am very much so biased towards particular avenues because of my patriotism. However, if there is a superior product, I will go with the superior product, and I will tell you about it and share with you why it's there. With that being said, I heard many different rumors about this piece here and many of the other pieces that this bow sells, this company sells. And there was a lot of rumors of supply chain issues, COVID, possibly having things machined over there, shipped overseas, and finished and assembled in the US, which made it be made in the USA. There was rumors such as that. There was also rumors that they were just fake, cheap, knockoff copies. So I wanted to see for myself because one of these came up, and I couldn't resist because I'd been looking at them enough. And you know, to be honest, some of those rumors seem a little bit fishy in many different ways, shapes, and forms. Especially because, for example, one of the most recent risers that came out from Hoyt popped up as a knockoff within what seemed like a couple of weeks, which is crazy. I'm glad curiosity got the best of me, and I bought one of these because I wanted to take a look for myself and just get a rough idea as to what this is, what's happening, and why it's out there. Is it because stuff's machined over there, shipped overseas, and finished in here in the US? And I'm happy to say that no, that's not the case. The reason I say that is because when I look at everything, from the box, like I said, the box, on down throughout everything in the kit that comes, the bow, everything, none of it's real. It's all fake, it's all different, and it's not even remotely same to the real piece. And I'll show you the close-up here side by side of the different pieces and parts in a little bit. So I got the riser, like I said, just to fill my own needs as a curious individual, as a patriot that loves America. So I could either tell you or keep it to myself. I wasn't sure what to do, and actually at first, I didn't even want to make that video. I wanted to just find out for myself. It satisfied my curiosity, and I wasn't going to talk about it anywhere else. But after discussing with my wife and some of my other closest allies that helped me with all sorts of various different things, there was support in actually talking about it. Again, that's what this channel is about, informing and educating the public. And so they felt like it was my duty to share with you how wrong it was, especially because there was a safety concern, most importantly, actually. And so I'm glad I did, because clearly there's a lot of emotion and a lot of charge going on out there in regards to this piece here. So with that being said, I'm going to put the camera here over the bench so we can get a closer up view of many different things, including the box, tiller bolts, and the weight, and some of the other things that I mentioned in the previous video. Then we're going to come back here and talk a little bit more about ethics and various different aspects of why this is such a problem. So we're over the bench here now, and we'll just address everything down the line. Start with the box. As I said, even the box is trash. Yes, it got smushed, obviously, by the shipper and not by the manufacturer. Clearly, that's not what I was claiming. What I was claiming is the box is clearly a knockoff. The reason I said this is, look at the quality difference. This is a couple years old. This came from overseas, so yes, it's worn. However, the details in the box itself in regards to the quality of the actual painting, the printing, the actual quality of the cardboard itself, you don't see the ridges on this one here. You don't see all of these little marks in the lettering where there's the bleed through going on, right? Yes, I'm nitpicking, but this is what I meant in regards to the quality difference, like the S there, double stamped, really, really crappy compared to this. The difference in the quality was garbage. Sure, the box shape's the same. Boxes are made all over the world and made in many, many different places. But even just looking at the actual cardboard itself, it's a very different quality, a very different piece of cardboard itself. And yes, it is a single layer piece and a single layer piece. But calipers don't lie. So we'll go to millimeters. We're zeroed out here. And we'll measure the Hoyt. And we'll measure this box here, the original, 3.5 mil-ish. Anywhere between 3.2 to 3.8 mil, maybe even 4. Really depends on where I measure it. So we'll just call it around there. Now we find a spot on this box that isn't crushed. And it'll be difficult because, again, the shipper, 3.1, 3.2, 2.8, 2.8. So original to knockoff's different in the actual size itself. So clearly, what I meant, without going much in detail, was it's a knockoff. Clearly, it's a cheap imitation. It's made out of inferior quality materials, inferior quality printing, and it just went downhill from here. This is my first impression compared to this. Very, very different. Very, very different quality. Very, very different quality. I see bleed marks and all sorts of issues here. Look inside the pocket flap. See the bleed marks again through here. All those colors. You don't see it here. That's what I was referencing. So that's the first issue, the box. Next issue, let's talk about the sleeve. Same quality? No. Same thing? No. Same factory? I don't know, but I doubt it. It's really close. It's similar, but so is a dry fit t-shirt is similar to another dry fit t-shirt. There's no difference there. But what is difference is in the quality of those shirts, possibly, and that's what's showing here. Very different materials. The materials themselves are different. But if you look at everything, same Velcro, not the same. Long piece there, short piece here. different Velcro. It's even switched. You got the hook end on this side, hook end on this side. I'd rather have the hook end on this end, because if you put your string in here, and I'm hooking it on this here, and it's dragging against these loops, it's going to fray a whole lot more. So they put it in the right place. They did not. We can look at the inside. Not the same, totally different. A very dense, packed felt, fleece, something. Rip off. Very loosely packed. Very, very non-dense. And, you know, obviously inferior in regards to the actual quality. So it's not the same. It's different. Does it look the same? It looks similar. But like I said, when I talked about the riser, from 10, 15 feet away, sure looks the same, but it's definitely not. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about weight, because I did mention that it felt very lightweight. Now, maybe I was just feeling strong that day. I have been working out lately, not to toot my own horn, but I'm getting back on the horse trying to strength train again because I'm tired of being a slouch and I really need to start exercising again. So, when I weigh this bow, I don't know what OEM weights are and how they're measured. Do they measure them without the grip? Do they measure them without the clicker plate? Do they measure them with or without the tiller bolts? I don't know. I can only assume that they measure a full-size bow here. And I do not have the original with me. I borrowed one from Eric and did a review on it, I believe. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But Eric was gracious enough to let me check it out a little bit. At least I coached him. And by the way, the OEM version is the Formula XI. Not very hard to find out. Anyway, so this bow, when I weigh it, we'll weigh it in grams because that's a lot more accurate. Gotta make sure the riser's hanging off the table. And it's 1,240 grams, give or take. 1,230 grams. This thing's not level. And sometimes if I turn it this way, it'll weigh a little different. It's just a cheap kitchen scale. So there you go, 1,225, 1,240 grams. Basically exactly what the actual bow should be from the real manufacturer and not a rip-off like this piece. So they did their job. The mass weight's about the same. So like I said, sorry, I didn't measure it. I was just trying to gloss over things, and the weight of it really means literally nothing at all, especially when the limb bolts are as bad as they are. Actually, no, it's a standard 3/16. This is what came with it, 3/16. So it is 3/16 hardware as it's supposed to be based on the company they're ripping it off from, except this Allen wrench doesn't reach down in there to lock and unlock like the real Allen wrench does from the real company. Now I can reach down in there and lock and unlock and get some leverage on it so it'll actually stay tight, because this way you're not getting any leverage, but maybe they don't want you to get leverage because of the problems that I saw with my tiller bolts. So that brings me to the tiller bolts. Let's talk about those and talk about sizing, talk about tolerance, and talk about what was actually going on here. So that way I can kind of quantify what I was talking about. We're going to pull both of them out. Hopefully I can get this one unlocked. Like I said, I think it was already starting to have issues. Okay, good. I must have already unlocked it. In regards to the claim of the wrong tiller bolts being sent, this bow from the real manufacturer is supposed to come with M12 by 1.25 thread bolts. Okay. The vast majority of risers are either M12 or M13 by 1.25. It's pretty standard. There are some exceptions and some other bolts are different, but due to what I know and what I've researched about this bolt, and I would know what tolerances are needed based on making precision tiller bolts and what is actually required. I've been educated a lot by Thomas and George in regards to how machine threads are supposed to be machined, resources I can use to find out what is the actual maximum OD of the, I forget what it's called. It's like the maximal OD of the actual threads themselves. For an M12 by 1.25 bolt, the tolerances are supposed to be under 12.96 millimeters-ish, 9.66, and above 12.71 millimeters. So when I measure this, make sure it's 0 so you can see it, in millimeters, 12.60, okay? 12.60, 12.61. We'll measure the other tiller bolt, 12.66, 12.63, 12.62. all of those numbers are under the absolute minimum that is accepted for a 6G bolt, which this thread should be 6G, or 6, yeah, I believe it's 6G. Is supposed to be 12.71, and we're well under that. So yes, they sent me the wrong bolts, but these bolts are undersized. They are out of tolerance. They're unsafe to put in any bow that is M12 by 1.25 if the tap is correct inside the riser. Now, if the riser is oversized, like mine is, this is absolute garbage and will just fall into and fall out of the actual threaded area. It's not because it's the wrong size bolt. It's because this bolt is garbage. This bow is garbage, and they absolutely did a terrible job. They have no respect for their own quality, that they let this crap out of the factory and then hope, or maybe they don't, I don't know. They either assume that people won't notice, or when they get hurt, well, they're, continents away. So what are they going to do about it, right? So when you look at the actual tiller bolt, I'm going to take the locking mechanism out too, because they're very basic and simple and straightforward, just so we can get a good look at everything and let more light into the situation. So that should be also an so that should also be M12 by 1.25, and so should this one. Let's measure these just out of curiosity. Zeroed out still, 12.68, 12.67. That one's a little undersized, but not much, not by much, 12.64. So that one's even more so. One of my precision tiller bolts. So look at me, I'm totally making mistakes on my own. Forget about everything I just said. These are supposed to be M12 by 1.25 if it was a direct copy, but it's not. Clearly, it's a ripoff. If it was machined and then sent somewhere else to be finished, but it's not. It's a ripoff. These are M13 by 1.25. Excuse me for getting ahead of myself and being a little excited. As you can tell, it's a little bit charged, this whole deal. So when I measure this, it's 12.6. It should be the same 12.96 to 12.7 something. 12.71, I think is what I said. Now that's for an M13 by 1.25. So these are M13 by 1.25. This precision tiller bolt here that I make for Win & Wins, that is M13 by 1.25. 12.92. 12.92. 12.92, 12.93. This is what you actually get from a company who cares about what they're doing and knows what they're doing, most importantly. This is what you get when people don't know what they're doing. So the hole inside the riser is supposed to be M13 by 1.25. The threads on these are undersized, so it is the wrong bolt, but it's not actually the wrong bolt. It's just out of spec. So it's going to be very, very impossible for me to get down in here. Oh, actually, I can get into the ID and get a good, accurate reading of the ID, or at least a very closely accurate reading of the ID here as best as I can. It is 11.78. It's very impossible for me to show you 11.78. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of blocked by the riser, but I can see it through my eye. 11.78 on the top. Let's check the bottom. This one is the blown out one. 12.81, 12.81, 12.83, 12.84. That's at the very entry to the hole. Now I'm going to go as deep as I can into the hole and measure it again. 12.01, 12.02, 12.04. Again, it's very hard for me to show you. I'm really sorry. Maybe you can see it from that angle there. 12.0 something, 12.09 there. 11 point, if I get it, is, like I said, it's tough. It's just about 12.0 something. Now, if I can pull it out so you can see, maybe from this angle. It's really hard. So I memorized these because I looked it up this morning. I didn't look up the internal dimensions on accident. I forgot. I will put a card down here at the bottom that's going to tell you what the rough tolerance should be, and I'm sure you'll see that it's way out of spec. Now this top one was not the bad one. It was not nearly as bad. So you can tell that with calipers, I confirmed that this hole is, as some people referred to, egged out. That means that it's bigger in the top than it is in the bottom. This is not a pipe thread. This should not self-lock. It's a standard machine thread. That means it should be parallel all the way through. A pipe thread, for those that are unfamiliar with plumbing, is it's actually threaded and tapered like this. So that way when you thread something into it, it self-seals so you don't get a leak. A machine thread would leak if you had water going through two pieces that were bolted together. So when I put this in the actual bow, it drops in several threads here because those threads are so oversized, it's not even funny. And this is undersized. Now, if I go to the top hole and thread it in, we'll do the test that I did originally on the other bolt. Go all the way down. And then come back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns, which should be the maximum turns out. You could consider 5 maybe possibly being the maximum turns out, but I've gotten away with 6 all the time. That's pretty garbage. Part of that is, like I said, the tiller bolt. Part of that is the crappiness of the riser itself. And if I take a quality bolt, it won't go in because the threads are so fouled. The tapping is so horrible on this that I can't fit the precision tiller bolt in because the quality of the machining, the quality of the tapping rather, because this isn't machined, and I'll show you why. The quality of the tapping is garbage. So they probably tap these by hand would be my guess, and that's why this one's so bad, because if you've ever tried to tap things by hand, the first few threads get a little bit oversized as you're trying to get the thing to walk in straight. It's tough. Definitely wasn't done on a CNC. At least it doesn't look like it to my eye. So, wrong bolts? No, definitely not the wrong bolts. Wrong bolts for the real bow, they're a millimeter too big. But even then, even the correct bolt size that these are supposed to be, it's out of spec. It's not done right. And comparing here the thread pitch, they are exactly the same thread pitch. So they are 1.25 pitch. They're just so far out of spec that they're flopping around inside the bow. I am going to string this bow. I did bring some gear, some safety gear, so I can string this bow safely. So that takes care of the actual tiller bolts. Now the bow itself is not machined. This is cast aluminum. Yes, many good cheap risers, budget risers are cast as well. And there's nothing wrong with cast risers, especially if you're on a budget. Why I care that this thing is cast has nothing to do with the quality of castings. Castings can be fine. And this one seems to be okay because the weight is there. Do I guarantee that every single other piece is also the same weight? Absolutely not. Because we can have issues with casting. The first thing that made me believe that this was cast was looking at the surface finish of the riser itself. It is powder coated, or at least appears to be powder coated, and I see so many flaws on here it's not even funny, because I did powder coating and do powder coating myself from time to time, and I know what to look for and how to prep a piece of equipment in order to be powder coated properly. And I also know what happens when you powder coat cast aluminum without outgassing it. It causes lots and lots of porosity. Porosity is air bubbles, and it looks like little craters and eruptions from underneath the surface of the product, because that's actually what's happening. As the plastic, because that's what powder coat is, melts into the riser gets hotter and hotter. You have to bring it up to a certain temperature. Generally speaking, somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 degrees, and it has to stay there for a given period of time in order for the actual powder, the plastic, to adhere to the surface to be a semi-permanent bond. As the aluminum continues to heat up as it's getting up to temperature, the gases from within the casting, the oils more importantly, erupt from underneath the surface of the plastic, causing these craters. And you'll see all of these dimples all over the riser. This is nitpicking, I know, and I understand, but this is how I see that it's cast. Lots of porosity there. Porosity, porosity. Down in these areas and all these other things that you can see that is cast. Where the grip goes over, they didn't bother to polish out the casting errors that you can see here. There's a line there and some marks and stuff in that section. Same thing over here. This is all casting errors. So after they cast it, they polish it up a little bit to make the surface finish look a little bit better. They can't get into the areas down in here to make the polish look really good, where the castings are actually pretty poor in these spots where there's these marks and dimples. You can actually see a casting line too that runs down the very center of the bow, and it's inside every single hole. So if you look just right through this surface here, let me see if I can see it on the viewfinder. See how when the sheen hits it just right, you can see a line on the inside of the center of the riser all the way through that whole surface, right? You can also see it through here. Maybe if I pull my phone out and light it from underneath. See that casting line? Yeah, there we go. Now you can see it. Casting line in the that lower section, like I was saying. Especially if I hold the angle just right there. See that? Inside the grip area. Casting lines. So this riser is cast. It's not machined. And clearly somebody wouldn't be paying another company to pre-cast some risers and have them shipped overseas and claim that they're machined, because it's very obvious to be able to see this. You can also check inside the holes. And I can see that it's very rough inside this portion inside the center. So again, like I said, I'm glad I bought this because I wanted to see for myself, were the rumors true? And it's clearly not true. Junk machining, junk tolerances, junk finish, junk tapping, and that doesn't even talk about the ethics. And it's not about being cheap. I don't care that this piece is cheap. Cheap is great. I think parents are insane for buying their kids the latest, greatest, shiniest stuff these days to let them go shoot. Chances are they're not going to shoot in a couple years anyway. They're going to find girls or whatever else and decide that that's more exciting. So you're always better off buying used gear. And I think that needs to come back, in my opinion. Like I said, I didn't buy a new piece of gear until I was probably 15 years old. I had used equipment, used everything, even the compounds that I was shooting. They were all used. Arrows, most of them were new, but as I shot recurve and got up in the ranks, I could buy somebody else's X10s for $100 for the dozen. Or I could buy ACEs used from people. And buy better arrows for cheaper money, and buy better bows for cheaper money. Last year's model, 5 years old model, is a perfect bow for a kid, perfect bow for a beginner, perfect bow for people who are on a budget. That needs to come back. If it's not accessible, buy other stuff that comes from a real manufacturer. There are a lot of real manufacturers out there. One comes to mind because I did a review on the bow because somebody bought a bow, had it shipped to me, and I reviewed it and sent it back to them afterwards because they wanted to see cheaper pieces of equipment being reviewed on the channel. It's cost prohibitive because I buy the equipment. It's difficult and it's hard. When I'm trying to put food on the table, trying to pay the bills, it's a little difficult, and I've got a lot of other content I could make that costs me very little money without buying equipment. I'm starting to be able to afford some of the new stuff, and I will buy more budget stuff so that way you can see more direct reviews and exposure. But sorry about that rant and that ramble. The cheaper bow, such as the SF Sebastian Flute Neo, I believe, is it the Neo or Evo? I don't remember. I have a link in the description below and a card at the top up there for you to see. It's a $160 riser, which is cheaper than this one, and it's way better. The tolerances are good, comes from a reputable manufacturer, and it's not ethically tainted. This stuff, avoid like the plague. Garbage tolerances. Maybe I have a bad one here, maybe I don't. And even if I do have a bad one here, don't support companies who are trying to destroy the industry with awful business tactics. This is a poor copy, very poor. Not even remotely close to some of the other things that you do see when you shop online. You shop online for a name brand piece, you can get the off-brand thing that looks basically the same because it's probably actually made in the same factory and it fell off the assembly line and somebody else threw another sticker on it and you buy it for cheaper. This is not the same thing. This is a cheap piece of equipment that is poorly done and a direct safety hazard. And like I said, I'm going to show you the direct safety hazard because I'm going to try stringing it today with those tiller bolts. I'm going to reposition the camera again and give you some final thoughts as to what's going on here, and then I'm going to string it up. Bringing it back to price. I didn't hate on this bow because it was cheap. I have absolute respect for beginners. I remember how much of a challenge it was to save up the little bit of money that I did earn through various different ways to buy archery equipment that I wanted. So when people want to buy budget-minded gear, please do. Buy it just from a reputable brand. WNS, which is a subdivision of Win and Win, Sebastian Flute, even Kinetic. There's, you name it. Even Hoyt has cheaper risers. Many different companies have cheaper risers, especially if it's a very recognizable brand. The price that you're paying for this is not even worth it because you could get much better quality stuff. You can get better castings with better features and it be real, meaning they designed it, they engineered it, they put in the work, and they are then reaping the benefits by selling you the product, and hopefully you're purchasing it. If you want a blue riser, get a blue riser. Just get one that's not a ripoff from another company. I haven't even talked about the ethics, and in regards to that, this is the worst example of anything that I could ever possibly imagine and possibly see, and I cannot believe that anybody would want to support this in any way, shape, or form. Yes, there are people out there that are like me and are curious. I bought it for a reason and a purpose, not to use it and not to go compete with it. However, some other people may be wanting it to look cool, a cool factor. I've seen a lot of discussion in regards to that. You got to buy the latest, greatest in order to be accepted. Not the case. If that is the case, I feel really bad for you because genuinely people shouldn't be judging you based on your equipment. It should be more based on you as the person, as the individual. And if it is about looks, right, and you want to be cool with the coolest, newest, latest, greatest, it's a ripoff. It's not cool. It's a ripoff. It's fake and it's awful. The way they're going about this is nothing but bad for the industry. It is doing nothing but hurting the industry because the companies that engineer this stuff, that put the time and the effort in, also spend a lot of money elsewhere. They support organizations, they sponsor individuals, they sponsor coaching, they do all sorts of community outreach to get the word out there about how great archery is, and do their best to provide quality, informative discussions in regards to things related to archery. And as you can tell, these guys do none of that. They're doing nothing but making people angry and creating all sorts of false rumors. Maybe they're not the ones creating it, but it's at least a result of the company itself doing what they're doing. I mean, this company has no ethics because they're directly copying something. It'd be different if they used some of the features of the bow to inspire them to make their own design and tweak it slightly, but to just take a bow off the shelf, throw it in a mold cast, make some casts, and put them out there makes it way, way worse. This company just doesn't even have ethics, right? They're obviously cheating. They're obviously stealing. They're obviously just copying something. They're not doing the work and the effort to make something better or to make something theirs. So what makes you think that they would have enough care and enough pride to make sure that you would get a piece that is good, a piece that is safe, a piece that won't hurt you? You can't assume that they would do anything other than just try to make money, because that's all they're trying to do is just make money. They're not trying to produce something that's high quality. They're not trying to even produce something that is the lowest quality possible at the best possible price that is safe enough for anyone to go shoot. That would be respectful. Go try to build the cheapest thing ever out of whatever piece of material you got for plastic. I don't even care what it's made of. I don't care how light it is. I don't care about if the limbs don't fit correctly. I don't care about a lot of different things. But if the bow's going to break as you go to shoot it or string it or anything like that, that's a concern. So this company clearly doesn't even have enough pride to make something else out of their own ingenuity. They're copying something extremely poor, and it is absolutely a safety factor. So I absolutely do not recommend anybody buying anything that this company sells, even any of the things that they may make on their own. I don't know if they do. I don't care enough to research. All I cared about was my curiosity, wanted to know, is this true? Are the rumors true? And definitely I can say without a doubt, absolutely not true. It is not being made overseas to be shipped over here to then be finished and branded and sold as something that comes from America. It's a direct, cheap, crappy piece of gear that I would not recommend anybody to buy. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna put this bow back together, and I got a set of junk limbs in here and a string as well that I can sacrifice, and I'm gonna string this bow up and see what happens. All right, I'm dressed for safety. I'm hoping I don't become a Florida man here. I've got the limb bolts set to be 5 turns out, which is right about what you would want as far as maximum outsetting. So my goal here isn't to actually see really anything. What my goal is, well, I would love to see this thing come apart on high speed, so that's why I'm going to run it. But what I want to do is I want to show you what will happen or could happen if your tiller bolts don't fit in your bow just like mine does. This doesn't go for just this bow, it goes for any bow. So you got to make sure you're not adjusting your tiller bolts in and out too far. You want to make sure you have them set properly, and you also want to make sure you buy from a reputable brand. You don't want to buy from a junk brand that does no engineering and then gives you a piece of crap that's going to come apart like it's about to here. Hopefully it survives stringing, because if it does, I got a draw board over here, and I'm going to stand behind a tree and draw it back and shoot it with the main camera at 1,000 frames a second and see what happens when it comes apart. So hopefully it survives stringing. I don't know if it will or not. These are 46-pound limbs, so we'll see what happens. All right, we are strung. I'm gonna treat this thing like a loaded gun here, and hopefully it doesn't come apart. But here's the draw board, and I am not going to change the tiller bolt settings at all. I'm gonna drop the helmet and get set up and reposition the camera so that way we can catch this thing coming apart, hopefully. So the draw board's set up, brace height's low, it's right at 7 inches or so. The draw board will drop back 23 inches before it stops. So that's right about 30 inches of draw length, give or take. 46-pound limbs, shorts, we'll see what happens. I stand here behind a tree. That's why you don't want to shoot these, because they can come apart if you've got improper tolerances. You must buy from a reputable manufacturer so you don't risk bodily injury. I'm going to take us back inside and get everything all set back up so we can review what damage happened here and talk a bit about it. Maybe if I can find a tiller bolt. So like I said, the entire point of that was just to show you how severely violent the disassembly of a bow can be when the limb bolt goes flying. I haven't seen it myself. I just did, and I've seen the high-speed footage, which is wild to see. And luckily, I did find the tiller bolt. It was about 50 feet downrange, essentially. So before anybody complains or anything like that, these limbs are not good limbs. These are throwaway limbs. I just happen to still have them because they still are usable-ish. Now, they're marked F4s, but they're not F4s. They're another limb that we were experimenting with that is not, I was advised to not shoot anymore. So I decided to sacrifice them for the purpose of this. I'm not going to show you the build info on it. The dovetail here did sustain some damage. You'll see that it's kind of kinked at the edge from it pinching on the actual pivoting or the adjustment part of the riser itself. And you'll see in that same area, the dovetail area, it just straight up ripped out of the bow. And it seems to have bent it because I can see the center of it is depressed downwards relative to the edges. And it appears that it's not very happy at the moment. The tiller bolt itself definitely has some damage. Some of the threads are missing on the end, as expected, because all it did was pull the threads out of the bow. So there was damage on the bolt, and there's got to be some sort of damage down inside here, unless, tolerances and all are just showing us that nothing's right. So nothing that was unexpected. I wanted to see it come apart, and I wanted to show you what would happen because it's a serious problem, a serious concern. And if you have any bow out there that has any play like this, the total slop of the fit and finish of the tiller bolt and the riser itself, it's a concern for safety. It's also a concern if you back your tiller bolts out too far. You have to have them within the safety factor. Some manufacturers specify exactly how many turns in and out, or a range once you get them. I have videos that I've created, and I'll put links in the description below and a card at the top up there to how to find the maximum in and maximum out tiller bolt position safely, so that way you know that it's within safe limits, because this is genuinely a concern, a safety concern, and a huge problem that can definitely be avoided with some basic pride in one's equipment that is being produced and sold to you, the consumer. And these guys, like I said, and we'll end it just like I ended the other video, it's garbage and it should be thrown out. Be careful, be safe out there, and thanks for watching this video. Felt like I really needed to just clear the air, kind of give you a little bit of information, a little bit of background as well, so you can understand a little bit more about where I'm coming from and how I produce videos for the channel. And on that note, I'm going to end this video. If you'd like to support this channel, please do consider. There's many different links in the description below. I can't thank my supporters enough.